Welcome back, everyone. Today is round 6 of the Croatian Team Championship, and I'm just preparing. I will play against Aczel Gergely from Hungary, and he's pretty underrated now, I think, with 2460 or something. He's been a grandmaster for many years, and his peak was around 2570. He lost a lot of rating recently for some reason, but he's extremely solid. I do have the white pieces. But yeah, in this tournament he made 4 draws and lost 1 game with black. So it's definitely not gonna be easy to get some edge out of the opening. I'm still thinking on what to play actually. Probably I'm gonna go for the Catalan. But I was also thinking of starting with knight f3 on the first move. I was even thinking about going e4, so it's not so easy for me to decide. My friend Dominic Horvath played against him also, and he did play e4, but Aczel plays a lot of Caro-Kann, which would be usually fine for me, but he plays some very concrete lines. For example, in the advanced variation, which I would like to play, he goes c5 right away, and I think he knows quite a lot there, so I'm thinking of going somewhere else. And since I prepared the Catalan for the previous games, I think it would make a lot of sense. And yeah, he's changing a lot of lines there, which on the one hand means that he doesn't really have a fixed repertoire there, but on the other hand it's also a bit harder for me to prepare because I have to check basically everything. But yeah, let's see. And yeah, now that I think about it, Catalan seems like the right choice, but I'll still think about it a little bit, and yeah, I'll give you an update a bit later. So just one more update before the game starts. It's now 2:50, so the game starts in already 10 minutes. And yeah, I decided for the Catalan now. I just want to stick to my stuff and yeah, have a solid game. And I have no idea which line he's gonna choose. So yeah, we'll find out together. And yeah, I'll see you after the game. Welcome back, everyone, to today's recap. Let's jump right into the game. I had the white pieces against Gergely Aczel, and yeah, as I already mentioned before, his current rating with 2460 is pretty ridiculous, since in my opinion he is playing at least 2500 strength, probably more like 2530. So yeah, this was a bit unpleasant, of course, if your opponent is a bit underrated, but still, I just played my chess, and yeah. So I started out with d4, knight f6, c4, e6, and as I've mentioned before the game, I went for the Catalan, and he was very well prepared, and I already mixed something up in the opening, as we will now see. So he went bishop b4 check, which I also prepared, but after bishop d2, I was a bit sloppy with bishop e7 with the preparation. I checked it, but not nearly enough, and I mostly focused on bishop d6 here, since he had some games here recently, and also some of the other lines like d takes e4, where there are some concrete things, so I mostly focused on this. And he played bishop e7. This is all standard theory here, short castle. I did also play in the past this move h4, which has gotten a little bit popular recently, and there are some ideas like knight c3, d takes knight d7, knight c3, some rook d1 when white has ideas with knight g5. So this is like a more sharp and modern way to approach the position, which is also quite interesting. But it's not that much in my style. I went for the standard move short castle, b6, and here I checked. I had like a small idea in mind which I wanted to play, but I mixed up the move order. I went rook c1 right away, not realizing that he can take now on c4. And yeah, I just thought that bishop e7 is like a must for him. And what I didn't realize was that my preparation was actually this was one idea I had to go for this line here with rook c1. CD, CD, and only then rook c1, because then there is no d takes e4. And the whole trick is, after d takes e4, if white can capture back queen c4, it would be pretty good, but black has this trick with bishop a6, and all of a sudden he's winning the pawn on e2, and I'm probably already in a little bit of trouble. There is also, like, completely off topic, but I knew this idea from a completely different line, which arises, let me just think, I think in this line. There is a similar trick, c5, d takes e5, and if now queen a5 check, black is worse because after queen c5 there's always bishop a3 here, and it's the same idea, and white simply wins a pawn here. So this is also a nice tricky line for white to try out. Even some strong grandmasters already fell into this into this trick. I think Nakamura had a game with white, if I'm not mistaken. So this idea is actually basically the same here. And after d takes c4, I realized that okay, I did something wrong. So I did spend some time here, 15 minutes, and then I came up with a4, which is probably a nice practical idea. I'm just trying to stop him from playing b5, and he did. My opponent did mention after the game that knight e5 was the move he checked, so he was still in his preparation here. And the line he told me was queen takes d4, bishop c3, and now queen d8. When white has nothing better than to take here, and after rook b8, if bishop e5, he has bishop d6, and yeah, this would probably just be a draw here if I would take on c4. And if rook d1, he has the important resource knight d5. When he told me it's around equal, which is probably the case as well. So I did went a4, and there's one idea to keep in mind in this position. b5 never works here because I can take and then I can go knight g5, when he cannot block the diagonal in the usual way with knight d5 because I have checkmate on h7. So this is one important idea here. And then he played a5, which is already an inaccuracy, but I did not make use of it. I went bishop f4, which is not the best choice for white here. Instead of a5, he should have probably gone for bishop b7 simply, letting me take the pawn possibly, and then just to go c5. Also here there might still be bishop a6 actually. So this is also one thing. After bishop b7, I'm actually not sure what I would have done. Maybe still move the bishop somewhere. This could be an idea, bishop g5 or bishop f4. But this looks better since anyway I will probably win back the pawn on c4, and a5 then is kind of like wasted time, at least it can be. Bishop a6 was also something we discussed after the game, and here I intended to play knight a3. And this is like a long-term pawn sacrifice here. Actually, during the game, I wasn't sure how I want to recapture, if rook takes a3 or b takes a3. The computer always wants to take with the rook, which also is a lot more logical. During the game, I just thought if I take with the pawn, I will also get the open b file. But I'm further damaging my pawn, so rook takes a3 makes more sense. And I did check a little bit here. Position is probably around balanced, but I have pretty nice compensation. For example, one nice idea was after knight d7. White has some ideas. For example, e4 is always an option just to control the center. But a5, b5, and now b4 was not bishop b4. Then there's c5. But b4 was one very interesting idea by the computer. And if black doesn't take, then his bishop is completely locked out, and I'm just slowly starting to push with e4, then bishop c3. And if I manage to get all of this, it will be close to impossible for black to get any active play. So this would have been interesting here after bishop a6. And after a5, I went for bishop f4, but knight a3 here would have been good as well, actually. And somehow I just focused too much on getting back the pawn, which if you play the Catalan, you shouldn't, because there are many lines where white just plays for compensation when he gives the pawn on c4. And knight a3 would be pretty powerful now. If black doesn't take the knight on a3, then I will simply recapture with the knight, which would be much better than how I captured in the game. I later on captured with the queen, and the knight on c4 would be much more active than the queen. I was a bit worried about bishop takes a3, but now rook takes a3, and white has fantastic compensation here, and it's actually pretty dangerous for black. I checked a couple of lines. If bishop b7, bishop b7 anyway is a bit strange. Possibly because I still have these ideas with queen c4. Probably still not right away because there's always bishop a6. But maybe now e4 as well could be an idea, or I move the bishop when I'm threatening to take the pawn. So I checked bishop a6 here, and now e4. And here I'm already threatening e5, for example, knight d7, e5, when here I have this important idea with knight g5, when I'm more or less forcing g6. And here black's dark squares on the king side are just super weak, and I guess I can do something like knight e4. Bishop g5 is coming when black is already in huge trouble. And the other idea was if black goes h6 here, to stop this, now I had g4. Another nice idea, which I've seen already sometimes in the Catalan. And I'm just trying to push g5. For example, if knight d7, I guess g5 is already pretty dangerous for black with the pin. And if knight takes g4, now I have e5, and now the knight is almost trapped because I will go h3 next, and black also here is close to lost. So black has to be pretty careful here, actually, not to run into a lot of trouble already. So knight a3 would have been a good chance for me. Instead, I went bishop f4, and now knight e5. My opponent actually already wanted to play b5. He already was reaching for the b pawn, but then he realized that after a takes b5, c takes b5, there is knight g5. And again, there is this idea, knight d5 doesn't work because of queen h7, and he cannot move the rook because there's bishop takes b8. So that was also a nice trick. So he went for knight d5, which is pretty logical. Queen takes c4, and here bishop a6, queen c2 back, and that's what I mentioned before. If I could take with the knight on c4, I wouldn't have to lose so much time. He went knight d7 now, which is a fine move, but c5 arguably would have been a bit better when probably black is already the one who is playing for something here. Sooner or later he will take the bishop on f4, and then he will have the bishop pair with no trouble at all for black. But he went knight d7, knight c3, and now rook c8. If he takes now on f4, now he will not get c5 that well, and computer still says this is equal. But this position, something like this, I saw during the game when it seemed quite unpleasant for black, because I will go rook d1, knight d4, and I can possibly jump in with the knight to d6. But yeah, even the computer says this is fine for black. But rook c8 was more logical. I took on d5, c takes d5, and here my opponent offered me a draw. The position is completely equal, but I did have a couple of I did have a look at the games of my teammates, and the match looked pretty unclear overall. And also I didn't want to make another draw in like 15 moves after like 15 moves. So yeah, I decided to play one with queen d1, and I did get some chances actually. He went knight f6. The position in general, I felt like it is a bit more unpleasant for black, even though the computer shows 0.00. But my bishop on f4 is very active, and his knight on d7 is quite misplaced. And in the game he went knight f6 to reroute it to the more active square on e4. But now I get knight e5, and all of a sudden I have already ideas with knight c6. And here he went knight h5, which is probably already quite an inaccuracy, but unfortunately I didn't find the right way afterwards. Instead of knight h5, let me check what's best. Bishop d6 apparently is the best way to play for black, when I guess after rook takes c8 here, I saw that after queen takes c8 I might have some ideas with knight g6, but I don't know how good it is. Yeah, this is actually the best move. Knight g6, h6, g6, bishop d6, and the computer just says this is fine. I guess it will be pretty similar to what happened in the game. So bishop d6 would have been better, but he went knight h5. I went back bishop d2. There was one funny line which I briefly calculated, and I didn't want to allow this option. After knight c6, knight takes f4. Probably it doesn't work, but I had no idea what's happening here. Now I'm just realizing, can I take here? No, then rook c1, bishop e2, and black is a pawn up. I did think about king h1 here, and I wasn't sure about something. I saw like some position like this when it felt like black should be completely fine, but probably I missed something. Oh, I didn't miss anything. Knight c6 is inaccurate because of knight f4. Okay, then that was fine. I went bishop d2 instead, not to allow this. And now he went back knight f6, and here I went knight c6, going for this sort of position, where I felt like I should be a little bit better, but yeah, it's also very hard for white to get something out of this sort of position. Even though I do have the two bishops, black has fantastic control over the light squares, also with knight e4 to come. What I kind of underestimated was this move queen b3, when all of a sudden it's actually very unpleasant for black already. I checked a couple of moves here. It seems like queen d6 is like the only move that isn't already much worse for black, because I'm just putting a lot of pressure on the pawn on b6. For example, if he takes on e2, then I can go knight c6, and then on the next move just take on b6, when also the pawn on a5 will fall. So this he cannot do. He has to go queen d6 here, and now bishop f4, queen b4, and he has to go for this position here, knight c6, bishop takes e2. And this actually, to my human eye, looks pretty awful for black. Rook f8, bishop takes b4. and maybe it's a draw, but it's it looks very, very bad for black, because I do have the outside passer, and now my dark square bishop is very active. So if this is really the best for black, this would have been a very good try for me. Queen b3, I had to try this here. Instead I went knight c6 pretty quickly, queen d7, and I went for this position here, bishop e1, already prophylactically going, stepping away from knight e4, since if black is able to capture one of the bishops, he's completely fine. He went h6, e3, knight e4, and now I went b3. And here he went f5, which also shows very good understanding. It does look like black is weakening the dark square significantly, but it doesn't really matter here, since he's only playing for light square control. And also one plan of him is to go g5 and then g4. And if he manages to do so, then I might already be somewhat risking something, because then my pieces are just doing nothing. Like if white does nothing, g5, then g4, and then possibly even h5, h4. And yeah, then black has just the best control over the light squares possible here. So I went h3, always with the idea that after g5 I can possibly counter it with g4, which also happened later on. He went queen d6, now I took once, rook c1, and now rook c6. And here black actually has a pretty nasty idea. For example, if I go something like king h2, he has this idea with bishop e2. And if I take now, I'm simply losing the exchange. And if I take here, then bishop d1, rook d6, knight d6, and I'm probably lost, because maybe I'm not lost, I have some drawing chances, but I will lose at least one pawn here. I guess b4 I can try and hold on, but yeah, I guess I'm losing a pawn here at least. So this trick with bishop e2 was pretty nice. Fortunately, I saw it. I took on c6 right away, and here I went g4. Afterwards, we discussed that king h2 might be a safer way to approach the position, because if black is to move, his idea is always to go knight c3. And if I have king h2, then after knight c3, this doesn't work, because now I have queen c2, and he doesn't have knight e2 with check. Here I'm simply taking the queen on c6. So king h2 would have been a nice prophylactic move. Position is still around equal, but at least now I'm getting f3. We were discussing something like queen c7, for example, f3, and the knight will probably drop back. And here something like king g1. When it felt like white has at least achieved something, position should still be around equal. We were discussing this a bit here, g5 and now g4. When my opponent at first suggested f4, but then we concluded that after queen d2, black is probably already under some pressure here, because if he takes, then my bishop will also get back into the game sooner or later with bishop g3, and the pawn on e6 is weak, and also the knight on f6 doesn't have any more active squares now. So king h2 would have been a better try. Instead I went g4 with the idea that now knight c3 doesn't work, because I have g takes f5 now, when here I'm winning the pawn on d5. So he went knight c7 to stop also some ideas with f3. Still now, after f3, he would have knight c3 again, because now my bishop isn't attacking the pawn on d5 anymore. But he's also keeping an eye on the square on g3, and he does have some ideas with f4 possibly. This is what he told me. And here I went b4. I already felt somewhat uncomfortable, because I wanted to play f3, but now I can never really do it because of knight c3. And yeah, I just wanted to simplify the position with b4, because also these pawns actually can become quite weak in an endgame, so I just wanted to exchange them. b4, a takes b4, bishop takes b4, queen c4, and now queen e1. I think one last important idea, because I want to push a5 on the next move and to exchange these pawns as well. He took on g4 now, h6, g4, and here he went knight f6. I was a bit worried during the game of queen a2 here, because a5 doesn't work so well, since he can take now and he has knight takes f2. Even this position is probably a draw, but here it's quite obvious that, that white is suffering here. Instead, the computer came up with f3, knight g5, and now bishop e7. Here, during the game, I only considered a5. When after takes, I saw bishop e2. When maybe this is still somewhat okay, but no, actually here I'm already under in quite some trouble here. That's also what I thought during the game, because I cannot really protect the pawn on f3. Instead, the computer came up with bishop e7. When after queen a4, queen b1 is somehow making the draw. I have some idea. I'm attacking the pawn on b6. I might have some ideas with queen g6. But yeah, this seemed pretty strange to me. I was also thinking about bishop takes e4, but again, this position, I'm the only one that is risking something here, because my king is pretty weak, pawn on a4 is weak as well, and I cannot really activate my queen, let's say queen c3, because I'm probably getting mated most likely here somewhere. Bishop can also come to f3 when my king is in quite a lot of trouble. So yeah, queen a2 would have still given me something to think about, but instead my opponent went knight f6, and now after f3, queen c2, he offered a draw, which I accepted. I would have gone a5, and after takes, I thought that if someone is playing for something, it's probably me. Let's say if black exchanges the queens, then I would be very happy, because then I can slowly activate my king. Position should still be like quite an easy draw for black, but I do have the two bishops, and I do have the better pawn structure. And if I manage to push e4, possibly somehow, and then expand with the pawns, then I could try and play for something here. But I thought if he keeps the queens on the board, let's say, I don't know, something like queen d3 just, and basically waits, then he's just always too active for me to achieve something. Also, my king is a bit weak, so yeah, this is just a draw, so therefore I accept it. And also it now looks like our team is winning. We're already up by 1 point, and the last person that is playing from our team is winning as well. So yeah, therefore I'm also happy that that the team will most likely win. I think just to conclude the analysis, the best chance I had was to go queen b3 here. I think this is quite a serious chance actually for white. I still need to check it here if a bit deeper. If black had some better way to defend it than what I've showed you in queen d6, because this endgame after bishop f4, yeah, this is quite a pity that I did not get there, because I would really enjoy to play that endgame. But anyway, 6 games have been played, 6 draws have been achieved. Now 3 more rounds to go. I hope that something more exciting will happen, hopefully in my favor. Tomorrow I'm playing against Ivan Šarić, the Croatian #1, who I think was also European champion a couple of years ago. So this will be quite a big challenge, especially since I have the black pieces. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's analysis. If you did, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Other than that, I will see you tomorrow. Take care.